best sort of anti-aggro tools the Hunter has is a lot of the time the efficient trap generations, or the secret generation, should I say, which can really mess with how Demon Hunter interacts with your board. But other than that, without trying to oversimplify this matchup, I think it really is whoever gets to stick those turn 1, turn 2 minions well enough, or gets the right turn 1, turn 2 minions, should I say, does feel like they have a huge advantage going into the middle stage of the game.
That's exactly it. It's the change in philosophy, right? Where previously Highlander Hunter was very mid-rangey. There was a big collection of minions from sort of 3 to 5, as well as the top end, sometimes going all the way up to Dragon Queen Alexstrasza and Nagrand Slam, or either or. So in that case, you did have to rely on a lot of things like Desert Spear to be able to fight back against aggro. Whereas with this version of Hunter, they're not so much putting in anti-aggro tech cards as they're saying, I'm just going to curve out better than you. Like, my curve beats yours, and I'm just going to more efficiently play out these 1-drop, 2-drop curves and just get on the board before you, and then I dictate tempo, I dictate trades, I get to go face when I take the value trades, and establish establish board dominance from there, which is absolutely the way that aggro mirrors in Hearthstone have played out historically for a long, long time, with a few exceptions with decks that do just want to outright go face every turn. It's going to be a battle for board tension.
And already this is a big deal. Without even reading card text or seeing the images, knowing what the cards are, you could tell already, for me at least, SYF has the advantage right now because he is going first. And obviously, with the curve that both these decks have, the sheer volume of 1-drops, you are likely to be able to take advantage of going first, as we can see from SYF's 1-drop start, but also a fantastic set of follow-up options in the next couple of turns, whereas Monsanto, coin Felmore is powerful, but is that just too far away in the future right now?
Yeah, it's rare to say that Felmore is potentially going to be too slow in the matchup, but Felmore might be too slow in the matchup here. Because this is already just so much damage piling through, and a Wriggling Horror is going to hit this board before that Felmore has any answer to this board state. Monsanto needs a powerful draw right now, and I'm not sure that fits the bill.
And this is the problem, isn't it? And this is what I was saying with how the Hunter defends against Demon Hunter has changed so much. I don't even really know what those powerful cards are. I guess like Bone Chewer would be one of the best draws there for Monsanto, but outside of that, there just isn't a lot of options when you are already this far behind.
Syf will test the secret here first, and I do like what his initial instinct is here. I also like that he's taking his time and not rushing anything, but I do like, quote, floating the mana here, even though you technically don't, because the Demon Hunter hero power is so efficient at being weaved in situations like this. But I think prioritizing extra minion presence over the weapon here, even though it messes up your outcast positioning a little bit, is very beneficial.
Yeah, and I think with so few cards in hand, of course, one is Lordkeeper Polkel, and there are some higher curve cards in the deck.
Okay.
Outcast is very easy to get to with Demon Hunter, even from the other side of your hand, if that makes sense.
That's right.
So, because your cards are just so cheap anyway, the likelihood of SYF drawing a 1-drop is still pretty high, so we could potentially still get that Dreadlord's Bite live. It does have the Polka if not, but ooh, indeed, how subtle does Monsanto need to use this Zephyrus to recover and get some kind of plan in motion?
Yeah, well, he could do with about 3 of them for the next 3 turns.
And
from
they
this
all need
point,
to cost 0.
Like. Yes.
Because
yeah, because right now the best thing he's getting off it is like a Holy Smite kind of play, right? Which doesn't really address the big problems he has right now. So he might just need to find a way to scrap for pieces on the board before Zephyrus can actually find a swing turn later on. But the problem is that Yeti that SYF has built on the other side of the board right now, because that is just going to make a mess of his health total, really, it seems like, before Zephyrus can come into play.
And even next turn, if this 4-5 sticks around, it's not even a Zephyrus Shadow Word Pain or Shadow Word Death, right? Because it is that awkward shape, so even some of those removal tools are not going to be available if this 4-5 does manage to stick around.
We'll see the drop. Okay.
Ooh, okay.
I was going to ask a question. Obviously, a 1-drop draw there was huge because he could re-outcast the Dreadlord's Bite, which obviously makes a complete mess of this entire board state from that point. But having not gone with it, I totally commend the play of continuing to play from the left, has the Dreadlord set up on the left-hand side of his hand for the outcast now instead.
And this also means he can Dreadlord Bone Chewer Brawler, which then forces the skull he's going to draw to that side. And then if the game goes that long, I don't know if it will, but if, then there's still great options there with the knock-on effect from the Polkelt, of course. And once again, back on Monsanto's side, and it's probably bad for me to say this, Sal, but I just don't really know what the best way to go about this, because it looks like you can get some work done on board, but what is the actual route to victory? Is it going to have to be Zephyrus X, Bow into Bane, into Bran, and just hope you don't die in between all that?
Yeah, I'm wondering if you could train Zephyrus into a cleave here. Like, if you bump 1/1/1 into the 3/2, the board state obviously resolves down quite nicely after the cleave, but you don't get to send the 3/2 into one of the 4/5s first to really tell it that that's what you want to do. It kind of has to figure out that much on its own. So yeah, I kind of respect the Dragon Bane here. He still gets to clear up a good chunk of the board. He loses a bit of minion presence to do it, but he also consolidates this, potential must-kill threat on the board that might be a distraction here for SYF.
Yeah, the question now is... Oh, it doesn't matter. Oh, yeah, never mind. I was going to say, does he hero power? But the Dreadlord's Bite, of course, will put Monsanto in range of just a Dreadlord's Bite swing next turn if he just goes face. So never mind. I always eludes me that 1 damage. I do often forget it hits face. It feels a little bit too powerful sometimes. But yeah, it's all going to be on this turn for Monsanto to see if he can hang on. Only 3 health left. It's like hero power Zephyrus Radiance or something.
We just Zephyrus Healing Touch for more healing there, right? The 2 damage just doesn't really seem relevant.
Well, it's the Dragon Bane, right?
It's true. Yeah. Okay, so
you just need it to hit the minion to kill stuff.
Right. Yeah, so you trade, you hero power, you try and hit the 4/5,
exactly.
And then you Radiance. Yeah, absolutely. I was not accounting for the Dragon Bane. That's the outcome.
Oh, okay. Wow. Oh, Monsanto. You cannot be greedy and go for Misha here, surely.
He's wondering whether he needs the Misha, because he might still need the full healing value off Zephyrus, right? Because he knows this skull draws the Altruis. So he knows that there's going to be a ton of damage that can hit face regardless, because the deck is in order right now. So I think he's trying to work out whether Radiance even gives him enough health to win the game from this point. And I think he's come to the conclusion that it does not. And that is absolutely the required outcome for Monsanto on this turn.
Yep. Oh, insane. I'm honestly surprised this game is still continuing. Oh, another Dreadlord's Bite, though.
SYF does not quite understand right now. He is lacking a piece of critical information. And now Monsanto gets to activate the counter swing.
But with the hero power, he still doesn't get healing touch now, right?
No. And that's the fine balance he's got to walk, right? Because this is aggro mirrors. He can't just be concerned about his own health total. It's that Dragon Bane on board that's changing the clock so much, right? Like, every hero power ends up being so valuable on the other side, especially when he's curving into Dino Tamer Bran himself here.
I mean, he will know that there's, what, a minimum of 3 damage? Because the next card is playable with the reduced Altruis. Because he just has enough mana. It doesn't matter that it's reduced or what card it is, he will just have enough mana for it.
Yeah, he also knows there's a discounted Stilt Stepper in hand as well, right? That will draw another playable card, most likely. So I think he can work out with a pretty strong degree of confidence that he is just straight up dead here. It goes the Skull route, yeah, because all of these cards will end up being free anyway, so he knows he can just guarantee it by playing all the cards. Yep. Stilt Stepper from the left, Dreadlord's Bite from the left again. 1 extra damage goes face. Down to 3, down to 2. 1 overkill in the end, but still plenty of damage to end up going through from Monsanto. I definitely have to go back and really break that down turn by turn, because there was a lot of perfect information involved towards the end of that. Obviously with the deck being in order and from Monsanto's perspective, at least, he had a lot of information about the game was going to play out. And obviously, I tried to make the point that he can't just focus on maximum healing because he has to set up a clock for himself. Like, it's no good staying alive for one extra turn if he doesn't kill his opponent that turn. So I'd have to go back and like really break it down to figure out if maybe going for a touch more healing would have been more effective. But I do definitely like the animal companion decision. That's the one that I'm pretty happy that I'm on side with up until that point.
Yeah, I think what impresses me the most so far, at least as Demon Hunter, is Aggro Demon Hunter. With the release of this expansion, was brought onto pretty quickly. I think people, got onto it pretty fast. But then this version, I think, is just relatively new, relatively recent. With the Skull, the Altruis, a lot of players were just curving out at 3 and finishing at that. And so far, even just today's games, which aren't that many on stream, of course, but if you just look at the performance and the things those cards and this build has done so far, you start to really understand why everyone is gravitating towards that style now of the Aggro Demon Hunter. It seems so powerful. But we are moving on to our next game, and Monsanto is going to be playing this Ain Warrior. And again, Sol, this is the deck at least we roughly believed was going to be banned. So this, again, will surprise me. And if Monsanto gets a smooth, easy win with this, then he's going to be looking fantastic for the rest of the series.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, honestly, I do think it's quite close. Like, I do think when we tested this, I think TJ actually wanted to ban Demon Hunter originally when he was playing against this lineup, Monsanto's lineup. And then was convinced by his teammates, I believe, in the end, to ban the Warrior. So I do think it's a close decision because obviously we've seen the power of what Demon Hunter can do on the other side. But the Warrior is going to come out into play here, and I think certainly out of the decks that Syf has available to him, this is one of the more positive ones that he would have been looking to queue into this Warrior.
I was just about to say the same thing. SYF with the Shaman this time going against Warrior is a much more comfortable matchup than some of the other decks he would have available. But overall, let's get into it. Bog, Spine, Knuckles in hand. Is that ever a mulligan, Sottle? I want to say a hard no.
Hard no sounds about right to me.
Yeah.
The more difficult decision is like whether you keep small minions, like curve minions early alongside the Knuckles. I think, that's one of the things that you do have to figure out on a case-by-case basis, because sometimes early minions aren't going to have an impact. And you just, okay, I have the Knuckles, I'm going to look for Dread Corsairs, I'm going to look for Lightning Blooms, I'm going to look for Horde Pillagers, so I can just maximize the effect that I have out of these Bogspine Knuckles. Whereas in some other matchups, you can't just, totem Knuckles and then actually expect to get away with a win. You have to be playing some early minions and competing for board more honestly. So I do think it's a case-by-case basis. I think keeping the Surging Tempest alongside the Knuckles is a pretty good compromise from the hand that SYF had.
Yeah, his hand is looking pretty solid so far, whereas Monsanto's on the other side, outside of the Sky Raider, just doesn't look great, does it? They're all the combo pieces, so to speak, but none of the actual meat of the deck to get that going, and no weapon available to him, no risky skipper mainly as well. It's like the next few turns might be not tough for Monsanto because, again, Evolved Shaman doesn't really pile on big pressure on turns, say 1, 2, 3, without Bloom, of course. But it does roughly look like he's going to end up kind of doing nothing for the few turns, and then suddenly Bogspine's going to come down, and there could be trouble.
Monsanto doesn't have a great deal of options here. He wants to really, really aggressively fight for the board with a early Bloodsworn Mercenary just to make sure things don't snowball. He can do that, but by the same token, like putting 5 minions in play this early is usually not something you want to be doing against Shaman. Worth noting that SYF is not playing the Sea Giant in his list that we saw from Silvername. He is instead going with those Faceless Corruptors. There's no Revolve in there either.
And also as well, a lot of the time in this game, you have to look at your hand and work out what the actual plan for the game is. You can't just try and do the same thing every time if your hand goes against that. And the Blood Boil Brutes plus the Bloodsworn Mercenary is one of, I guess, the few ways that Monsanto, along with that Barov, can actually fight back from a big push on board from SYF. And I think with this hand, that is generally going to be the plan now. If it can just find a risky skipper, these Blood Boils are actually going to be active very, very easily against your average Shaman board.
All right, Raven, talk to me. How illegal is it on a turn where you can play Bogspine Knuckles to not play Bogspine Knuckles?
Are we talking Faceless Corruptor?
It looked pretty good that turn, didn't it?
It definitely didn't look bad, and I was just gonna say I've done worse plays myself, but that's not really selling much, is it? Let's be honest. but yeah, I think it's worth considering. But it feels like, especially with that Bloom now, or the 0 mana hero power, depending on which way SYF executes this turn, he always has that available to him next turn anyway.
Right.
Because he can just Bloom hero power if he uses it this turn, and then have the Bogspine Knuckles swing number 2 regardless. So I think because of that, I'm okay with him just getting this first wave in now.
I do like this compromise, though, and I'm totally on board with this play. Like, you know, I was bringing it up more as a discussion point than a play I actually wanted to make, but it leads to the conclusion that, you know, it's a very scary situation to just leave up the 1/9 on board, right? Because suddenly Shield of Honor, Bloodsworn Mercenary, all of these combinations can come down, and they've kind of made an equally impressive board to what you've done with the one big powerful thing that your deck does. So I think this compromise line of just shipping all the damage in is where I'd like to land here as well. I think SYF has played this turn very nicely.
Yeah, because if he didn't actually trade that in, and this challenger was higher health, he could actually like poke the 4/6 and then just play a Blood Boil Brute to kill it off, right? And that dramatically reduces down a lot of power. I'm not saying it would have been the best play, but that was available, whereas now it's just not. Like, the plays get significantly worse after that. So yeah, it's actually paid off for SYF quite well here. Instead of being able to kill the 4/6, he's now had to settle for just the 3/2 on board. Still strong play, but just not quite as strong as it could have been if SYF made a different decision.
How about a moolah? How about a moolah?
Ignore what the arrows tell you in Hearthstone. They're always liars. They're always absolute liars.
And I was like, I know you, spectator. Wow. Pretty solid board, actually. The Divine Shield, pretty nice. The even the Dragon is actually going to give SYF just more juice in his hand going forward.
Yeah. Ankar is huge, though. That does unlock some routes to victory for Monsanto from this point, because so much of this deck really does hinge on landing those risky skippers.
Oh, and then Armorsmith as well. Not directly needed, of course, right now, but just always a nice card to have in hand if you're fishing for those skippers.
You see SYF reacting. He sees the Ankar and he sort of sits up and adjusts in his seat, like, oh, okay, this isn't going to be quite as easy as I thought it was going to be. We've got a game on our hands. Because, you know,
the Divine Shield damage this turn.
The Divine Shield is nice. The 3/2 is nice, but, you know, it's a death rattle that goes into hand, not on board. So in terms of resistance to risky skipper, the board wasn't that impressive until this Mogu came down and hit the board. Oh! 10-10. That's huge.
Well, it's going to be a Barrow turn. There is nothing else Monsanto has that deals with this. There's nothing fancy because the health on board is so high. Monsanto, of course, going to take his time and work through all the options. I'm sure anyone who submits Pain Warrior has done some pretty nutty turns in the past with this deck, because it is definitely capable of some incredible turns, but I think Barov just has to hit the board here every single time.
Yeah, completely agree. But I also totally echo what you're saying, where when you have this hand with like a skipper, an Armorsmith, the ability to theoretically copy a Blood Boil Brute, like this deck could get a swing turn from here. Like, that's very possible in some worlds, but yeah, here this is still a swing turn, just not as powerful a one as could have been expected in some scenarios.
And just taking a step back onto, I guess, the bigger picture of the game, because I feel like it's kind of snuck up on us. This Grom in a rage, SYF's only on 19 now.
Yep.
He's sort of just ended up taking a lot of damage with a few of these trades on the weapon, a couple of minions here and there getting a hit. So suddenly, maybe a weapon next turn, and then if these minions get cleaned up, like the Reaper Scythe next turn into the Grom, the game could just suddenly end for SYF here.
What to
This one's so finely balanced because both players really have to fear the lethal outs from each other. SYF, I think, will have a better idea of how close to lethal he is than Monsanto will. I don't think Monsanto will credit his hand being exactly this damage packed as it is right now. With that Storm Strike Anara combination, even if the weapon does go down the drain, being very, very effective.
I do like the... Oh, okay, he isn't going to go for it. I was going to... Either way, I like the Armorsmith being killed now, because that's your problem. Like, the Shaman doesn't run burst damage outside of a weapon and whatever you evolve into, right? Oh, that's funny. So I do like, just get rid of the armor, don't let then the Armorsmith get copied, and then suddenly Monsanto's back up to 30, and everything you've done in the game has gone out the window. Get rid of the Armorsmith, and then try and build a plan going forward with the second set of Bog Spine Knuckles.
What now?
So he's 2 off, right?
He is 2 off indeed. But plan A is pretty straightforward here. It's just a matter whether Monsanto can find something better, because he can clear the board and he can set up lethal. That's not complicated to achieve. It's just, Monsanto trying to minimize, or trying to maximize, sorry. Does he want to weave in Evil Quartermaster, gain that little bit of armor, try and find himself some additional lackey outs as well for defense if he gets Titanic Lackey, and give him the extra security he needs as well? Or does he want to make a more aggressive push with the minions instead?
Yeah, for a quick second there, I was trying to work out if he could end the turn with the weapon being swung and have a Blood Boil Brute on the board, which is quite threatening.
Right. Regardless, does end up going with the play that I referred to as Plan A, but that's what that turn is for. You see this with these players all the time, where they will rope. It's not because they haven't seen the good play; they saw the good play immediately. They're trying to find the best play, which is sometimes hidden. But Monsanto, in a timely manner, goes back to it.
It does look like it's going to be enough. No minion on board to evolve into a taunt. Now it looks like Grom in a rage is going to get the job done, or Risky Skipper, whichever way Monsanto decides to do it. And that is going to be game number 2 over. Monsanto evens it up in this series in what feels like a bit of a rarity today, Sottle, in a series that doesn't go 3-0.
Yeah, absolutely. They've been very, very one-sided today, at least in match results. I think it's interesting because at least in all the 3-0 series, the games themselves haven't seemed super one-sided, right? Like, it seems weird to say they were close 3-0s, but a lot of them were. You look at that Yarla game where he was dead to 2 bombs at the end with over 50% of his deck being bombs. There was a lot of scenarios like that where things were very, very finely balanced. But Monsanto is going to avoid the 0-3 curse and at least put some respect on the name of TJ and Frodan's bracket up until this point, with the Americas players making a march through.
Let me just count. There are a respect count of 1 now. Okay, yes. Yeah, okay, good.
But I think what does command a lot of respect here is the Pain Warrior, the Risky Skipper Warrior, because it's looked very, very impressive. It is kind of a pet deck for Monsanto. He has brought it out in situations where other people haven't been relying on it, right? There was a time where it was just ever present, but I think Monsanto has been known to bring it out in some kind of off-meta situations. But so far, based on his 2 performances with it, does seem to be a very smart bring to the tournament.
Yeah, couldn't agree more as we move on to our game number 3. SYF on the Shaman once again. Monsanto now moving over to that Highlander Hunter. And we did just have a sneak peek of one of the star cards, I guess, for this expansion for the Hunter, which is that Rinlin's Rifle. It's going to that does have an ability to cause some havoc once drawn and swung, of course. But for now, that's going to be mulliganed away, and Monsanto will be rewarded with a pretty solid opening hand, honestly.
Yeah, going first, 1 drop in hand, and your number 1 tech card for the matchup with the Acidic Swampoo's already locked and loaded. You can't ask for too much more than that, I would imagine. Does mean he would like to draw a 1-drop or, say, Bone Chewer Brawler or something off the top next turn so that he can actually spend all of his mana effectively without just dropping the ooze. And yeah, now there's questions, Raven. Okay, question answered.
Done. Yeah, even any of the 1-cost spells as well would have been really nice, actually, to just preemptively buff that minion up. That's why I've got to get Sludge Slurper down and actually get rewarded to an extent with that Titanic Lackey. Gonna make it a little bit more difficult to clean up, but Monsanto already ready with this blow.
Yeah, SYF diverted from the cage match custodian just for an extra turn there. He looked for the more aggressive push on board. Obviously, if he'd have got shoot lackey or rush lackey, he would have been able to answer the board state immediately, which would have been fantastic. Knew that he didn't need the weapon for that one extra turn anyway, so chose to go max tempo for a turn, as well as moving the overload onto one turn earlier, so that he was not now overloaded going into this next turn, where he wants 4 mana available, so he can just coin the weapon that he drew off the turn 3 cage match.
And this is a very weird turn for Monsanto. There were a couple of options. I liked the attacking with the weapon to kill the minion, but there was just a moment where I was actually considering Bone Chewer hero power just to get a little bit more beef on the board, just to get a taunt in the way of this 1-1 that you could proc soon, potentially. But now these 2 minions are just going to be cleaned up.
Yep. The Inara is absolutely filthy here. We answered the question from last game, at least, Raven. There was a turn where it was legal to play Bogspine Knuckles, but he chose not to.
And, ooh. Not great, honestly. I think he would have wanted Freezing Trap as a priority, just to deal with this Inara.
Agreed. Freezing. Even misdirection can be surprisingly powerful in this matchup, just because of the way the sequencing of attacks quite often goes, and you can get multiple minions to trade into each other before they end up being evolved, which can be very, very nice for you. Not super relevant in the state that we have, but honestly, you know, we just saw the secret get selected, right? SYF has a much more difficult decision of like how much he wants to respect this secret, sight unseen as to what it is. Because, you know, the potential of a freezing trap could end up being brutal here.
Just get knowledge, it's pack tactics, and Monsanto on picking that secret as well. Did just go for the generally better secret. Nothing too fancy, trying to get a pressure plate to go off, because Shaman pretty much has got rid of a lot of the spells it was running at one point. It really brought those down, so much less chance of it getting some kind of activation there.
What if it's just no Knuckles again?
Because of Faceless Corrupt, I'm noticing a theme, Sottle.
Well, it's also Serpent Shrine is really strong this turn, right? Because it allows the Wind Fury to be fully effective, just cleaning up the remaining minion and then pushing damage. Yeah, I really like this play.
Ooh. Honestly, I think I would have ended up going for Corruptor myself, but the more I look at this, it's kind of the same board, except you've still got a Corruptor in hand, which I like.
Right.
So yeah, I actually quite like this.
Phase Stalker, get your secret from your deck first, which gives you more information about what you want to pick up from the rifle when you end up swinging this.
The problem is, it's kind of past the point of the game where this kind of play does too much. The secrets are powerful, don't get me wrong, but unless Monsanto plays this Swampoos, just kind of floating the mana and generating a secret which already SYF can, or look like he can play around pretty easily with these 2 minions that aren't going to die this turn. He's going to be feeling rough for Monsanto right now. He is edging ever. Does he go explosive, right? Just for damage to face because he has Bran?
Very possible, yeah. He currently has freezing. That was the pull from the hero power. So he has that in play. Explosive Trap might just be that extra 2 damage that he is going to need to get over the line. It's an interesting option for sure.
It's tough because it's not putting him to 8. is the frustration.
Yes.
Right,
but
do
it
you
is
like the extra minion?
It's functionally 1 turn, right? It's that 1 hero power that you need to bridge the gap and get through.
And the big deal is, if one of those secrets is Freezing Trap, one of these minions doesn't get to trade.
Right.
Which then suddenly means, well, what's going to happen? Is it going to be Bog Spine trade? Well, if it is, there's your extra damage.
Right. The board can still get cleared by the Faceless Corruptor.
Okay, so it's turn 6. How illegal is it? Did he do anything with maybe like pre-setting up a Mogu? Does that ever do anything more? Probably not, right? That's probably just gonna happen later, if there is a later.
Yeah, I like it. 4 more goes face. Down to 20. There's 12 showing. 4 more from the hero again on the following turn. So that makes Dino Tamer Brand go face a very scary play for Monsanto to make this turn because he knows he is not far away from straight up lethal himself.
What a horrible draw.
I wonder.
I like Guardian Og Merchant, but not on this draw. It's not even a good backup plan to say play minion and hero power to then try and do some kind of setup that way. So just kill off the Inara, which does remove a lot of damage.
This is just frustrating because you can't get the hero power in next turn either, right?
Yep.
Alongside the brand, you're still that frustrating 1 damage off lethal.
And strangely enough, SYF's hand, card by card, is strong, but the actual playability of his hand this turn is kind of weird, right?
Yeah.
Nothing quite adds up.
Whoa, did this all go? Okay, I thought he committed everything to face already at this point.
His opponent floated 4 mana.
Yes.
Even if you're not the best hand reader in the world, you're against Hunter and they floated 4 mana on 7 mana. Like, come on. There we go. He's going to do the trade. Retain that 1 point of health he so desperately needs.
He's not currently showing lethal, though, with the minions that he evolved into. I was looking at lines, amazingly, again, without the weapon, where he could have like gone for like a Desert Hare Mogu kind of turn instead, and then used the rush to trade into the minion, which ships all damage face, and then potentially sets up lethal more consistently with the weapon on the following turn. But I think it's pretty close, honestly, between how much damage is pushed over to.
Monsanto using this 1 mana to just see what secret is on offer.
Yeah.
But especially with these secrets, like misdirection might look tempting, but for me, just playing Bran looks good enough. Put him down to 1 hero power next turn, done.
He's just got to ask the question, right?
Because the worry is, what if the next evolve is just taunts?
And
then your Bran just doesn't hit. I think you have to make this Bran hit this turn, and then just rely on the opponent not generating heal somehow from the minions. So I like this a lot from Monsanto. Whoa, it's trading! Okay,
Trading.
I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, he's taking board.
This is probably like a big brain play. But it pains me to see and not just put him to 1.
Earthshock just for the rebuy, presumably. Seeing too much value in the others. Totemic Reflection, I think, doesn't really get the job done. Whoa! Tidal Wave, and then you go Hare, Mogu. You can kill the King Crush with the Mogu. Still get a giant board. You have Tidal Wave for security on the following turn. Just take board at this point, right? Yep. Trade it off, smash face. Ah!
1 off! Still 1 off! But with MD, misdirection might... Well, it won't from we can see, of course, because of Tidal Wave, but
yes.
From Monsanto's point, misdirection might save him the day here.
I think that wry smile on Monsanto's face, just hidden, obscured from view by his hand, he may have just reached the same conclusion. Yup. Ship it all face and hope for the best with misdirection. Yeah. Again, SYF does have this 100% beat, I do believe, in every scenario. This is mostly mind games, I would imagine, at this point. There could be some random Fireheart Shaman spell he's considering with this trade, but he's considering maybe if I throw 1 into this, he'll think it's Explosive Trap or something and won't consider the right sequencing.
And the thing is, nothing heals for 1, right? So putting him to 1 and putting him to 2 is effectively the same outcome with the hero power.
Yeah. I think SYF will work out that he has everything beaten here. He can. That's a free attack. He can just test for freezing. Now he can Tidal Wave, get all the healing. And now at this point... he wouldn't have lethal through Explosive Trap, right? The way he's ended up doing it. Interesting.
I think what he was testing for snakes and pack tactics though, because he would heal for more, right?
That's true.
If he actually proc them, so he'd just go up to full health at that point. But SYF does take the victory in an extremely close game, and there are 2 things I am definitely going to go back and check later on. Is 1, could Monsanto push 1 damage somehow, because that 1 damage was a terror for him that game, and 2. What, and this is more subjective, I guess, but what was the build up to that potential King Crush going face? Like, what were the reasonable odds of him actually losing the game by trading or losing the game by going face? Because for me, it's easy for me to just say, oh, just go face and hope they don't have a way to stop you. But obviously, in that situation, you do have to try and cover as many bases as possible. So it's a very, very interesting game there, especially towards the end.
It was, yeah. You've got to account for the fact that he knows there's the frozen Volpera in hand as well, which obviously represents extra damage from the weapon, which I believe is 1 off at the point if he leaves the board state as it was.
Right.
So any source of damage in the deck would kill him at that point, which is understandable. He's staring at a handful of cards at that point, right? Yeah. But I think also, just something that you learn about that matchup is if you can force them off board, they do struggle to kill your minions a lot of the time without just running their own face into your minions and trading with their weapon. And the fact that they left Bran as a 4 health minion so it couldn't just get rushed into by the Mogu. SYF had to find the extra assistance from the Fireheart Earthshock to make that happen. I think would have made the play more appealing as well. But yeah, it certainly was a very intricate little end game between those 2 very aggro-focused decks. But it does mean that SYF finds himself on the hill now with his Highlander Hunter being the only deck he has remaining to win.
I'm loving this series, the amount of Hunter we're getting, and loving the tournament in general, because I do think, again, I will harp on about it, but the deck is very interesting. What everyone, or generally, I guess, people assume is a straightforward deck. There are a lot of decisions, especially when more and more secrets are coming into play. Rinlin's Rifle jumps in there as well, and decision-making on all those secrets you can generate can make or break games, and the decisions aren't really that simple a lot of the time. So pretty exciting stuff overall, but you are right, SYF only has this Hunter to get a win with, and he's also got either Monsanto's Hunter or Monsanto's Rogue to go up against. So 1 mirror match and 1 kind of strange one, and one that actually might sound weird but scares me as the Hunter player if I go up against this type of Rogue, because it can just remove you from the board, and it feels like in that remove you from the game.
It's true. I think generally, Gia and Derek were talking about how Rogue was the weak point in the lineup, and I would be inclined to agree with that. This series is night and day from what we saw in the Silvername series, where Monsanto was playing against the equivalent lineup, because Monsanto immediately got out, and with some very, very smooth play on turn 1, he was able to just get ahead of Hunter and snowball the game from there. I don't think, you're necessarily going to draw Foxy Fraud Shadow Step every single game to be able to dominate board that early against a Hunter that consistently. And the old meme of rogue and damage permanence does come back into play at a certain point. So I think SYF will be feeling very comfortable with the spread of 2 matchups that he has left to win.
Yeah, we can just take a look at this Monsanto's Rogue. Fairly standard as far as I can see. Nothing too crazy that jumps out. I guess the one thing we should talk about, honestly, is the lack of plagiarize, right? That's the big difference from, say, all the casting we did in Grandmasters before the expansion, with plagiarize being a pretty common card that made some big impacts on games. It's just not around anymore unless it gets generated or comes off an R in some way. It's had to make some room for cards such as we can see in hand Swindle, which is a very effective tool at just drawing through the Rogue deck. Yeah,
and I think that is partly a nod to the Mage just disappearing from the metagame entirely, because that was one of the big matchups where Plagiarize was just a terror, right? Like, Mage was a deck that operated by wanting to play 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cards all in one turn, and Plagiarize became a huge stopping point for that in Rogue. But with none of that left to contend with, I do think it can be a little bit weak in a lot of these matchups, especially now when there's a lot of decks that are, just playing a couple of one-drops and getting on with it, which isn't really going to be a high-value plagiarize for you in a lot of situations.
Yep. Definitely had a big impact on the build. Here, though, SYF got off to a pretty good start, honestly. These are just some of the best cards in your deck, which is a good way, even though they might look, some of them, quite expensive for turn 1. He does have a turn 1 play. Could just coin out 2 into 2 into X going forward if he really wanted to. I don't think there's a need to, but it is available to him. But here, just going with the 1-drop and getting to pick his poison, so to speak, with these secret options.
Yeah, it's a bad feeling in terms of tempo, right? Like, there were options there, as you were talking about, where if you go coin scavengers and you end up, hitting the Yeti that you can just play next turn, I think that's potentially dream scenario. Because obviously this ends up being 0 tempo for SYF since it just dies straight up to the dagger. Means he could potentially just fall behind on board here. And you can see Monsanto even has the luxury of just turning that down and saying, no, I don't even need to dagger it. I drew something better, which is just to get straight up ahead on tempo.
We'll be very interested to see how SYF utilizes this hand, because there are so many ways you can go. Even if it was like 1-drop coin pack tactics, because then the board gets so difficult for Monsanto to deal with, and so like awkward to navigate, because he does have to consider what secret it can be and how much he's going to get punished by that. Looks like SYF is going to go for scavengers. Let's get the phase stalker.
Yeah, it's the bad outcome. I think that was the better outcome if he coined it out on turn 1, and the worse outcome if he did it here.
Because the problem with this play is SYF already had a lot of things he could do, and now he has even more things, but you're still only going to have 3/4 mana with the coin next turn, which means the hand feels like it's getting clogged up, and he's falling behind on board, which is something I feel you really do not want to do. You don't want to give Rogue the time to actually create these big effects it can have with the the multiple card plays, whether it's Quest Adventurer, or even just having landing a safe miscreant and then having the backup of all those lackeys. I feel like SYF is playing this a little bit too slowly for my liking, at least.
Yeah, he did have a slow-ish hand in terms of what Highlander Hunter looks like these days. But certainly he's had 1 or 2 options for the coin. Well, quite literally, because he's had 2 turns, and I think the coin was viable on either of them.
Yeah.
But must be said that the curve that Monsanto has here is certainly a high percentage draw in his deck, and normally SYF's slightly slower build here would have plenty of time to operate against this version of the deck. I love the questing though. I know Monsanto again was doing his due diligence with the play, but the fact it comes down as a 4/4, it resists basically all removal that SYF would have to throw at it this turn, and you still, because you topped Ferrocat that turn, you still, no matter what you draw off the Swindle, have the activator for Miscreant on the following turn by going Ferrocat Miscreant. So I really like doing it this way around.
It's fantastic because the Hanar is a 1/3. Coin Grinlin into Hanar Freezing Trap doesn't work, obviously, because it doesn't die. So just everything about the shape of this board and the fact the other mini is such a threat as Quest Adventure is, Hunter just doesn't run answers to this kind of board. SYF is going to have to piece together a sort of 2 to 3 turn plan here, because there just isn't a good way for him to actually just answer this board right now.
Going to go Coin Hero Power here. Looking, I would imagine, for a board-focused secret, because Freezing Trap really doesn't have a big impact here, as you were saying.
Okay. I think he should probably test with this Hanar before he does anything else.
Yes. The secret is snakes, but obviously from Monsanto's perspective, he has to play around everything here. So, potential of freezing will be paramount in his mind, but also pack tactics is obviously the biggest terror here. Like, that would have been the best outcome, I would imagine, for SYF on that turn. So I'm sure that'll be forefront of Monsanto's mind as well.
Choose soon.
Tough options. Mainly because, not in the good way, I think all of them weren't great. Polymorph is an okay answer to this Phase Stalker next turn, but still not exactly what we would have wanted. Monsanto, it's like he's going to make the trade with the Questing. Doesn't want that Phase Stalker to stick around.
Yep. I like this line. Makes sense. I think the ideal, of course, would have been a secret off the One Thief, so then he just had would have had potential for Blackjack Stunner turns. Although, actually, no, it would have still been too expensive, right? Yeah, he still wouldn't have been able to get it all done, so... It was going to be a tricky turn off the passage, no matter what happens, but still he finds himself in a very, very comfortable position overall. That Questing Adventurer is a problem that's absolutely still not answered from SYF side.
Exactly. Yet again, the Rinlin's rifle just doesn't really get the work done. Is it the point where he has to, like, Rinlin trade, get explosive to then try and isolate the Questing, which isn't going to work because we can see Monsanto has like board fill for days.
Yeah.
But something needs to happen. I think he is at the point where he has to go explosive and then hope that the next swing gets him freezing, and then that next turn he can maybe again isolate the Quest Adventurer.
Yeah, maybe next turn he can Demon Companion charge into something, like, assuming this attacks, these two minions die, and then some more small minions come down. Like, maybe he can attack one with the weapon, Demon Companion charge into another one, find some way out to make Freezing Trap happen, but it seems like fractions of a percent from this point.
Yep. I think we are quickly leaning towards the part of it's going to be Zephrys or bust. He will just be dead next turn.
If the 12-6 wasn't enough to worry about.
Yeah. And I think if this 5-6 gets to attack, I'm not sure if Monsanto on 24 health will care too much about the coins. You know what? There you go. Play your Bran, okay? Play your Bran. It's fine.
Yeah. I know you wanted to. All right, just for a treat. Since it's the World Championships, you can play your Bran.
But again, this was the issue we talked about, mere moments ago. Even if it was freezing now, he can't really isolate this board, which means he's going to just get hit again. Explosive, as you can see, just does not cut it. His best chance might be a misdirection, and can he kill the 1-1 and then maybe misdirection and just hope Monsanto messes up with ordering, maybe?
I mean, it's just so unlikely again, right? Like, again, yes, you can get Demon Companion and charge into the 1-1 potentially.
Well, if he plays the Brawler, then you would imagine the 5-6 goes into the 2-3, but then you'll just attack with the 1-1, right?
Yeah.
So he needs to do Companion into the 1-1. Oh, it wouldn't matter anyway, right? Because he'd just dagger.
Yeah,
Either
the
way.
dagger is a big deal here for sure. But the combination of pack tactics and misdirection here that SYF has does create some genuine problems for Monsanto. The polymorph might end up being the solution that SYF did not plan for, but in terms of what SYF actually knew about, I think this is about as good a setup as he could have possibly had.
All I really want to see is a 3-3 sheep. That's where I want to see the trick. I just want the 1-1. No, into the sheep.
No. You want that one to go face. Trading doesn't play around anything in that scenario, does it?
It doesn't, no.
I'm pretty sure that attack always goes face. Yeah,
Well, he could trade and still always win, but yeah.
Sure.
Because he can always dagger face, which then swings even if it's into the quest and he doesn't die, and
That's
then
fair.
he gets the victory. So Monsanto gets the win there with the Rogue, and everything is even 2-2. We are going to go into game number 5, and again, these games are just full of so many decision points, even in the first few turns, even if those decks aren't just, aggro decks with all the 1-drops in the world. With this Rogue deck from Monsanto, we saw his early turns in previous games do quite amazing things, but even then, just the ordering and the position of that Questing and the Hanar at the health it was at was just the perfect problem for SYF to not be able to deal with for Monsanto. It was huge.
Yeah. You do need to take a look at those early game turns, though. I think coin on turn 1 was a possibility. Also, coining out potentially a battle mage on turn 2, I think, was viable as well. Of course, he had Rinling's rifle and Bran in his hand, which really encourages him to hold on to his coin for as long as possible. If not to coin out the rifle, then to coin out the Bran. And as I mentioned, you expect as Hunter that you don't necessarily need to get off to the most insane start there, right? Like in some cases, playing a 1-2 or a 2-2 on turn 1 doesn't have a big effect on the game because it ends up getting backstabbed anyway. It's just that big chunky mid-range damage that you want to be getting through in big chunks, from turn 5, 6, 7 onwards that really puts the sword to Rogue. But Monsanto did everything right, absolutely. Zero questions with any of his plays. Even the micro-sequencing at the end, we knew it wasn't pressure plate, but he didn't, so he plays the lackey first. No interest in what the dragon was. He was just getting the extra minion in play before he polymorphed the minion, so he didn't lose his questing adventure. All of the sequencing was on point. Monsanto has looked pretty much perfect on Rogue so far, and we've had some questions about that deck as a bring in this aggro-heavy meta. But Monsanto's making us all look like fools right now, Raven.
Yeah, and as if it's a gift to myself, this is our last cast of today, actually, I believe, unless correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep, it
and
is.
we get to finish it with a Hunter Mirror. So, great. Fine by me. As we go into it now, both these players, everything on the line here. A big win, whichever player takes this one. Hunter versus Hunter. These mulligans are going to be huge.
Dwarven Sharpshooter, Adorable Infestation on side for Monsanto, but he is going second here, which means if he faces down a large minion on turn 1 from SYF, his Dwarven Sharpshooter starts to lose a lot of value, but that's where the Adorable Infestation can really start to hit pay dirt, because the biggest a minion is going to be functionally that's played on turn 1 is 3-2, right? Without the help of Adorable Infestation on the other side as well. So being able to get your Sharpshooter out to a 2-4 be very, very effective against that. As it stands, Monsanto doesn't have any of that to worry about because it's just a tiny little 1-1 being played from SYF.
I'm already trying to work out if Coin Phase Stalker's just the play. They go Demon Companion, Coin, and get those double 1-drops out nice and early. Monsanto just going for maximum board presence early on because it is very difficult as Hunter to fight back once they've lost the board.
Oh, yes.
Big deal, though.
If you are an SYF fan, that's what you wanted to see, because even this early, in a very, very aggressive deck, it's weird to say, but Phase Stalker might have just been too expensive to draw off that Scavenger's Ingenuity at this point, with how efficient you have to be with your mana in this early game. I think Wolpertinger was absolutely the one he was looking to hit there. And
even with almost regardless of what this plays from Monsanto this turn, I'm even looking at whether SYF just goes Eagle on Bow, actually, and just removes the Phase Stalker from the game.
Yeah, I can see it.
I like it.
Yeah. And the pace has certainly picked up. I think game 1, perhaps game 2, was played quite slowly between these two players. In general, the pace of play has been quite slow, even though the series have been going to 3-0. Like, even Silvername was roping out a lot of the decisions, who we're usually used to seeing as one of the faster players in Europe. But the last 2 or 3 games of this series, the pace has really, really picked up.
Yep. Horrible Infestation going on the Dwarven Sharpshooter, making it a pretty sturdy minion in itself now, even after taking some damage. But this mainly does allow Monsanto to go wide. And this causes a problem for SYF because he does have this bow, so he can kill whatever he wants on the board, but only one of them. So which one do you go? The Colette? Go for the Dwarven Sharpshooter? He's making this a tough call for SYF by doing this play, and not just, say, playing a plain Petting Zoo to put a 3-3 on the board.
Right.
He's going to respect the AoE buff, technically removing the most damage from the board, but also killing a lower health minion than he could have with that bow. Rinling is huge.
Ridiculous draw, Raven. Hand that was basically gassed out. He just had a 3-mana 3-3 in his hand, and he got himself not only perhaps the best on-curve play in his deck, but also the card that gives him fuel to turn that Petting Zoo from a bad card to a phenomenal card at the flick of a switch. The problem is that Ringling's rifle is so low tempo this turn. Does he concede a little bit too much, depending on what the secret ends up being?
Well, that's the big point. If it's explosive, it could be great, but it's all about which way he wants to go here. So this is actually pretty difficult. The snipe's not that important, but the explosive trap, although is good, SYF could just make a trade first, get the knowledge, and then just not go face until he's completely solid on the board and removed everything Monsanto has.
Yep, and having now tested for the trades, he'll have a pretty good idea of what's up. Plays a minion, figures out it is not snipe, plays a spell, figures out it's not pressure plate. So yeah, I'm pretty sure he will be convinced what the deal is at this point. But the important part of that turn, most important turn, secret sequencing aside, is that he got the ooze down, which was insane for SYF on that turn, but not quite as insane as that unleash draw now for Monsanto.
This is the easiest unleash all to the dome hero power. He's in such a good spot. Pettinzu just... This is the problem when you have this weird explosive trap face-off with another player, is the more you play minions, the more they don't have to deal with explosive trap to an extent. Obviously, there's a limit. There's a limit on that, because obviously if you just keep hero powering them, they'll die if they never go face. But Pettinzu just gives these minions such good trades first, and there's enough minions afterwards to use like one last minion to prot the trap. Whereas I think if it's just unleash go face, he's only 2 turns away from actually just brand win. I guess the same can be said if you do it this way round. It's just, I feel like this is a lot of minions. This was a lot of damage from this unleash.
That was the counterpoint I was going to lead to, though, right? Is that if your plan is end the game with Bran, the unleash damage is actually completely irrelevant to that equation, right? Like, apart from tying up 2 of your mana to hero power next turn, the unleash damage actually doesn't change that clock. So I think it was kind of an interesting decision there for sure. But now that Zephyrus off the top creates so many different possibilities for SYF to make offensive pushes and defensive pushes here as well.
Yeah, this is so close. And although I completely understand the point for the unleash, and that is 100% true, I think because Monsanto has so much health, he can just push all the damage he can. Shield block comes out of the Zephyrus. Any big draws here? Not the biggest draw, but most importantly, it's a good chunk of health. Can still set it up though.
Shield block over healing touch because he was low on cards. That's pretty interesting.
I've actually never seen that before.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever seen a shield block from Zephyrus.
And now this is the X factor, right? This is where potentially those 5 little puppers that we could have had on the previous turn might have actually had a pretty serious impact on this game.
You can still do it this turn though, right?
It's 1 down though. I think it was 5 minions before, right? And this is 4.
Right.
Yeah.
But you can hero power, so he still gets him to the 8 range.
Yes.
And he knows he can go face, right? He's aware of that.
Should be.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, in terms of secret, yes, he is. I'm just saying in terms of damage as well, he should know that he is.
In terms of secret, yes.
Yeah, because there is 11 damage in play, and he knows, realistically, the maximum he's going to take is 8, especially now the Zephyrus has been picked up. Or been used, sorry.
Yeah, and because it was used to such, I'm going to say weird effect, and that's not SYF's fault, by the way. I'm just saying, I don't think I've ever seen a shield block from Zephyrus, so that was weird. But only 5 health, which could have been a little bit more, which would have actually put him not dead if it was a healing touch.
It's a big deal.
Clear the board.
3 extra health is a big deal here.
It's the worlds of difference.
SYF, I think, just has to bet his winner's bracket life in this World Championship. He has no way to play around it. He just has to bet on there being no Dino Tamer Bran in hand, and I imagine at the very, very least that means that his own King Crush connects to the face of Monsanto on this turn.
When you're in this situation, you just set up 2-turn lethal. You say, if my opponent doesn't have it, I win. If they do have it, they win. Unfortunately, that's the way it's going.
Yeah, The kicker is, I guess, like double trade plays around one extra card in kill command as well, but I don't think that's a luxury that you have to afford. And yeah, there will be some fingers pointed at Zephyrus this game for sure, I think, from SYF. But overall, I think Monsanto played a very, very nice Hunter mirror there. Played extremely tempo-focused. Essentially made the play that we were calling out for SYF to do in his own Hunter game previously, where he just maxed out with the coin as early as possible. Used that kind of benefit of the coin just to seize tempo as early as he possibly could, because that's where Hunter wants to be. They want to be ahead. They want to be leveraging that position and dictating things on their own terms. Dictating trades, which in Monsanto's case was 0. He dictated that he would take 0 trades that game and send every single point of damage to the face. That pack tactics that hit the board did not even get activated on SYF's side, and it's going to be Monsanto who has stampeded through this group to join Yala through his work is done. We will see him tomorrow in the semi-finals vying the chance to call himself the 2020 Hearthstone World Champion.
And of course, as you can see, SYF is not